Hello everyone, I'm Alfian and today we are going to solve the Hackerrank challenge on the data structure section called the array manipulation. And for this particular challenge, we are tasked to create a one index array of zeros and a list of operations. For each operation, add a value to each array element between two given indices. Inclusive, once all operations have been performed, return the maximum value in the array. And for this example, the end says 10, which is since we are using Java 7. If you are going to use another language other than Java 7, you are encouraged to do so, but for this tutorial I'm using Java 7. And for this function right here, it says returning a data type of long value, which is the one higher from the integer data type. And the function itself, it has the name of array manipulation, and it takes two parameters, which is n and queries right here. And for the n parameter, it has the type of integer, and for the queries parameter, it is in a form of nested list integer, which in other words, it's a nested array of integer, just like the one described right here the queries right here. It is a two-dimensional array, and inside the nested array it has an array that has the length of 3 elements. And for this one, since we are starting with an one index array of zeros and a list of operations, and the list of operations itself is the queries nested array right here. And let's declare our integer array called the array, and then we construct new integer with the length of 10, which is the n parameter right here. It takes the n, we insert the n from the parameter inserting into the newly created array or the constructor array of integer. And for the next one, we should iterate the query to the array. And for this to the array, it has the value of nested array right here. For the first element, it says 1, and for the second element, which is 5, or the b variable right here, and the k, which is 3. And for the next iteration, we have 3 elements or 3 values that we can assign into a variable. Then we can use this ladder as the calculation to solve this array. It says 4 as the first element, which is a, and b, which is 8 as the second element or the index number 1 of the nested array, and the array itself is placed on the index number 1. And for the next one, which is index number 2 or the k, it has the value of 7. And we add the values of k between the indices a and b inclusive. So it means after we declare all 0 right here, like we did on the constructor right here, and then we adding all of the 3's right here from the index number 1 or the indices number 1. Since it's index 0, then we can alter the 1 into the 0 index array by using -1, and then up until we hit the index number 4, since we are starting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then since it's 5, db value is 5, and we should alter this, and we need some kind of value shift or variable shift of by 1 to fill the array of zeros right here to this desired value of the first iteration, which is on the second row right here. And for the third row, we have 3, 3, 3, and then 10, 10, 7, 7, 7. Why is it happening? It's because we are adding another 7 value, which is the k value right here, all 7s into the indices number 4 or the index number 4, and until the index number 8. Since it is 4, then we will convert it into the 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. And then we are adding, since it's already filled by 3 right here, then we will add 7 into that indices, and then since 3 added by 7 will be equals to 10, and so the other one will follows. And since the index number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, index number 5 has 0 value, then we will add 7, and we got 7 as the value of the index right here. And also the same thing goes to the last iteration right here, which is 6 and 9, 6 until 9, and it is adding only by 1, and the largest value is 7 after all operations are performed. And if we look over here, we have 7 as our maximum value after all of the last iteration of the array. Then we need some kind of calculation to find which element has the highest number among all of the array elements from the array variable right here. And then the 10 will be nominated as the highest integer or the answer of our challenge right here. Hence the output, expected output from this function is in a form of long, which is one level higher than the integer data type. And since we are operating the queries right here, accessing each of the value of the array of these arrays, then we need a for loop for in I equals 0 as long as I is below. Since we are working on a list integer array list, then we need to treat it with size, queries dot size, takes the size method, and then I plus plus, and then we declare our in of a, which is the a value, and we access the value from the current iteration of the queries array, queries get of the current index, which is the whole 1, 5, and 3 array right here. And then we need to access by chaining it using the get method, and then we are getting the first index of the nested array from the first iteration. And for the first index, we need to pass in only 0, and it does the same thing to the b. Let me copy this to make it much more faster. B, and then for the last one, which is k, and the get value, since b is on the second parameter, not second parameter but on the second index, then we need to assign index number 1. It also applies on the k value, which is on the index number 2. And then you might want to solve this by creating a function to fill all of the trees into the desired index from index 1 into index 5 only, using the array fill, or using another nested for loop inside the for loop right here, or using while loop to loop over the index 1 and then up to the index 5, and then we fill it with 3 using the plus and equals operator. But let me show you something. So in order to solve this, let's say we have for the sample input right here, which is the 5 right here. 5 is the n value, which is the length of the newly created array. It's all starting from the 0 value with the length of 5 elements. And for the next one, which is 3, we only have 3 iterations or 3 arrays inside the queries nested array right here. 1, 2, and the third array right here. And for the first iteration, we have index 1 and 2 and fill it with 100. So since we are starting from the 1, just like I show you an example from one before, which is using only index 0, and then we can alter this the way we want. But for the sake of the video, to minimize the confusion, then I will follow the example right here using 1, which is in reality it's index 0. It is 100, and we fill the index number 2, aka index number 1 is also 100. And then for the next iteration, we fill the index number 2 until the index number 5 with 100. And then so we did it as the iteration goes from the queries array and the index right here, and then we fill the index number 2 until the index number 5 with all 100. And you don't have to mind about the result right here, the second update list and the third update list. It is the same thing as I will show you after this. And for the next iteration, which is 3 and 4, as the last iteration, we only fill 3 and 4, and we will calculate the result, and we need to return the maximum value among all of the array elements right here of the array variable right here. And after the first update, it says all 100 on the index number 1 and index number 2, and then for the second update, since the index number 2 already added by 100, adding another 100 will be count up to 200. So for the index number 2, then we need to count it by using this horizontal calculation, and then the value will be 100. We are counting down right here from the index 1 separately on every index, every indices. This is 100, and then calculate by 0, added by 0 equals to 100. And for the next one, we have 200. It's because on the index 2 we have 100 and also 100. We have 200, and also it goes the same thing to the index 3, because 0 plus 100 and then plus another 100 again equals to 200. Also goes the same thing on the index number 4. And for the next index, since it's only 100 right here, then the value will be 100. And we have our result right here, and we only need to return 200 as our result. And if you have to use the nested for loop, the worst case will be, the big O notation will be O and with the power of 2, because it is quadratic value and the quadratic complexity. And then why I was saying it is the worst case, it's because let's say if we have 100 lengths of the array that we need to initialize, and then we have 100 iteration to complete it, and if we happen to use the nested for loop like the one that I already mentioned right here, we are using another while loop or another for loop to write a value into the newly created array, which is like this. For the iteration number 1, we have to write 100 and then 100, and then for the iteration number 2, we have to write all 100 into the said index of P. And then the same thing also goes to the next iteration, which is not that efficient. And let me show you something interesting. Instead, by using the array fill or another for loop or while loop to achieve the highest number of the array elements, and then we returning the 200 from all or another highest value of the element, and then we return that integer, which is not that efficient. So instead, I'm using only, let me copy this, using only the same approach but much more efficient by using, since let me copy the array, since we are using the 100 right here and another 100 right here. How about using, let me delete this first, delete. How about using a difference array method? So a difference array method, it is going to be the same thing, but if you happen to take note, the A value starting from the A as the index, which is 1 right here, and for the B of the first iteration, which is 2, and we fill both 1 and 2 as 100. What if we still fill it with 100, and then for the index number 2 we don't assign anything, and for the index number 3 instead we assign minus 100? That is the function of the difference array. And for the B equals to 2 right here, then we need to B equals to 2 plus 1. and we only need to shift the minus 100 to the index number 3 of the array that we created before. And for the next one, which is a equals to 2 and b equals to 5, and then we added, of course we added by 1, and we don't have to worry about array out of bound, because we will create a new array using the n plus 1 as acting as a buffer of the array, in the constructor with the n parameter, using the n parameter plus 1, and that way, using the plus 1, we will add another 0 to our implementation. We add another 0. You might be wondering why I am adding another 0 to the newly created array, and that confuses a particular individual or particular audience in this video. It is because if you look over here, which is the b plus 1, and we have 5 plus 1, or for the previous iteration, which is iteration number 1, we have 2 plus 1, and then 2 plus 1, which is 3, and then we shifted to the right instead of on the actual index of b. After we shifted into the right, and then we, instead of adding by 100, we use the negative number or subtracting by 100 instead. And since for the next iteration, which is 2 and 5, then we will add the 5 by 1, and 2 stays added by 100. And then for the rest of the index, we don't have to fill every elements. Then we only need to add the minus 100 to the last index, or the buffer index. We call it a buffer index. Let me enlarge this index name. It should be the index number 6, or the buffer index, and we subtracting it by 1. And for the last iteration, which is a equals to 3 and b equals to 4, since b plus 1 is 5, then we have to use the, let me draw this. For the a, we have to add it by 100, and for the, let me use using comma, and for the b, we need to use the subtraction operator, subtracting by 100. To do that, since a equals to 3, then we need to stay at 100, and then for the, we don't have to fill the index number 4, which is the pointed b right here, and then we shift it to the right, which is index number 5, and using the 100 to subtract it. And let me align this. Okay, so let me explain what it means. So if you look over here, we have 100, and then we need to write 100. And for the next iteration, which is also 100, then also instead of using 100 right here, just like we did from the previous one, adding 100, since the index number 2 from the first iteration is not being filled anyway with the 0, then we have to use the 100 from the first iteration, using 100 right here, adding another 100, which is 200. The result will be 200 is because 100 right here, adding by 100 right here, and we have the result of 200. And so for the next one, 200, and we subtract it by 100, we got 100, and adding another 100, we got 200 again. And for the next one, we still have 200 from the state we are in. Using 200 right here is still 200 because it's all 0 from the above. And for the next one, we have minus 100, and that we get the 100 as our subtotal value. And for the next one, which is minus 100 again, then we got 0 as the calculation right here. So to, let me use this to summarize. We have a equals 1. It does the same thing using the a equals 1, and then we added by 100. We need to assign the array index, array of the a using the a value that we iterate from the for loop before, which is right here, a. Then we can utilize this a plus equals by 100. It's the same as using the, let me move this part and let me eliminate this part. 100, 200, 200, 100, 100, and 0. And since we already know the answer it is 200, then let me do this for much more simpler way, but it is more complicated. But believe me, it is for the sake of minimizing the processing complexity or the time complexity, so that way we can get the best time complexity or as efficient as possible. And we are utilizing the one that we declare right here, which is array of the index of a added by another 100 from 0, and then for the next one, which is the b, you can set using the array b and then using plus 1 by subtracting it by 100, and that way we got 0, 100, 0, 100, 0, 0, and 0. And for the next iteration, which is 2 right here, then we have to add 100. So that way, let me make this small so you can get the better idea. And we are using the, for the next iteration, which is the, let me eliminate this to make the view much more easier. Okay, so let me also eliminate the 1, 2, and 3. And for the next iteration number 2, let me eliminate this one. And we have the 2, which is, we have the index 2 assigned to the a right here, 2 and 5. Let's remember that 2 and 5. 2, we added 2 by 100, and then we, since it's 5, db is 5, then we need to assign the buffer to 100. And for the next iteration, the last iteration, which is 3, we have 3 and 4. We assign 100 to 3 and 4. Remember that 3 and 4, we adding 100 to the 3, and then 3, since it's already minus 100, then we will adding another 100, and that way the result will be 0. It will be neutralized. And then the b value, which is 4 and added by 1, if you still remember, then we need to subtract it by 100. That is the function of the difference array. And if you want to look over the result will be, if you calculate the array and iterating another array using, since we already used the for loop for the first pass, then we use the 2 pass to iterate the actual array that we created before. Okay, so for the first iteration we have 100, and let's adding a sum as our sum value, which is already 0, and then added it by 100 from the array iteration that we already declare, and then added by 100, and adding for the next iteration, which is 2 right here, and we add another 100, we will get 200. And for the next iteration we got 0, and then the sum will stays. 4 will also 0, and 5, which is minus 100, and we got 100. And for the next one, the last one, which is the buffer element of the array, then since it's already minus 100, then we will return 0. And we, of course, we don't have to use sum equals 0 as our returning value, because we will always return 0. And to minimize the returning 0, then we need some kind of an if check to check if, while we are looping the iteration from the array, we need some if check to check the maximum threshold possible from the array iteration right here as we go through it. So let's repeat this. Sum 100 for the first iteration. Let me align this. The first iteration. Okay, for the first iteration, and then we assign the max to 100, and max variable will track record of the maximum possible value inside the array iteration right here. And then for the next one, which is 200, and since max is already 100, then we add a check if the sum is higher than max. If sum is higher than max, then max is equals to sum. That way we have 200 as our max. Since it's 0, it stays 0, sum and max stays 0, so it stays 0. And then using the minus 100, the sum will be minus 100. Not minus 100, but 100, since 200 subtracted by 100 will be equals to 100. And subtracted by another 100, we will get 0, and the max value will stays there. It's because from the pseudocode of the if check right here. So we got the same value or the same result, but with much more effective approach. I know it's complicated for us beginners, but believe me, it will save you so much time in your technical interview if you happen to apply for a web developer job or anything about programming or a code. So it is the same thing as the one that we declare right here using the fill or the rough explanation of this array iteration process. So the process behind this is we are only adding the maximum value from the first starting array, which is the A right here. It's also from the A, and this one is also from the A. And we use the minus B, use the B plus 1 as the subtraction or the polar opposite from the 100 right here, which is minus 100, and we will assign this to B plus 1, which is 0 right here, since 0 is the ending of the current iteration. And it is also the same thing. It's because based on the frequency right here, and it's all 200, and I don't know how to explain this behind this formula, but I believe it comes from math operation, or I don't know what the name is. And the B plus 1 is equals to minus 100. And also, since we are adding a buffer after the class index, then we add an invisible 0 or another minus 100 after the class index of the B that we already assigned as B right here, which is the 100 right here, and 100 right here, and also 100 right here. Okay, so let us implement this by using the assignment array of the A minus 1 is adding using the addition operator by the K. And then for the next one, array, we muted the array B minus 1, not B minus 1, but since we already using the B plus 1 right here, then we don't have to use minus. To do that, we can use the B, and using the subtraction, don't forget to use the subtraction, subtracted by the K right here. And don't forget to add a buffer index using the n plus 1. And you might be wondering why I am assigning B right here without the minus 1. It's because we already used the plus 1 right here for the 1 indexed array as the queries right here, since the queries using the 1 instead of 0, and then 1 will be assigned to the 0 index array right here. Then we have to use the array, the A minus 1, which is the A right here, 1 minus 1, which is equals to 0, and we assign the proper elements of the array index right here of the array element. And for the B, it is B plus 1 to assign the opposite of the K value, which is minus 100. And since the queries is also 1 index, the same goes to the A right here, and it's only 2 right here, which is index 2 placed right here. If we have to place the index 2 right here, then it is the right thing to do, because index 2 is should be pointing to the 1 right here, but shifted to the right, and we will get the array B right here. And that is the correct index pointing from the B. And for the next one, for the 2 pass, we have to iterate our array using the for, in the I, using the integer of I equals 0 as long as I is below the array. Since we are declaring integer array, then we can use the length property instead of the size method, and then using the I++. And for the next one, since we are iterating our array just like we did right here, using the sum and max and iterate our array right here, then we can use the, before that we can declare our integer of the sum equals 0 and also max equals 0. I don't know if we can use the max sum and max comma 0. Maybe it is. And for the sake of the video, let me use the sum equals 0 and integer max equals 0, so I don't confuse you. And we have to iterate our array by using the sum plus equals the current index of the array of the index element. And you don't have to worry about adding a negative number because it will automatically follows. Let's say if we 200 using the plus equals operator of minus 100, then we will still get 100 as the current result of the sum. And then for the max, we can add a check if max is below the sum or the sum is higher than max. It does the same thing. If sum is higher than max, then we assign the max as the current sum. And then for the last one, we only need to return the max in the max, just like that. So let's run the code to see if it works, and let's submit the code. And we have failed test case. Okay, so since the long value right here, we need to return the long as our returning max. Since the test case will use the value above the integer limit, then we have to declare the integer, replace it using the long array. And for the k, we need also assign it to the long in the k. So for the a right here, we can assign this to long. Let me use the in again, integer. And for the data type of sum and max, we can change this to long sum and long max. So let's run the code again to see if it works. Let's submit this. Okay, so yep, how do I close this? Okay, and so we only have to fix it using the data type of long array. Is because the long array, we are allowing the array beyond the maximum limit of integer value as the long array constructor right here, and also it allows the elements as the long value and also the k value right here, which is also long as expected from the query's last element as the 100 right here. I believe it's possible to be long because the test cases were failed before, and also the sum, it is possible to be long, and also the max variable, which is also the data type of the long integer, and we returning the max variable as the data type of long integer. So okay, that was long. Okay, so that's about it. I hope you understand my explanation. If you still don't understand, you can ask me in the comment section, or if you have better solution regarding this challenge, you can also tell us what you think in the comment section. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.